The registration process for students who wish to participate with disability support resources involves a few simple steps. The process is outlined on the DSR website. To locate this information, go to www.gvsu.edu/DSR. Select Student Resource in the navigation links on the left side of the page. Next, select Registering for Disability Support Resources. First, complete the online application. The application is also available as a printed form in the Disability Support Resources Office, which is located in 200 Student Services Building. Second, submit a copy of your medical or psychoeducational documentation. Details of documentation requirements will be discussed shortly. Third, discuss your accommodation needs when you meet with a DSR advisor for the first time. It's very important to have this meeting before situations requiring accommodation occur. We recommend setting up this initial meeting before classes begin or very early in a semester. Once a student is active with the DSR office, meaning that the student has had the initial meeting and provided proper documentation of the disability, an accommodation letter called a memo will be prepared. The memo will discuss and validate accommodation requests. The student will provide this memo to each instructor. DSR requires documentation of the disability. Exceptions are made when the disability is obvious. For example, if the student uses a wheelchair. The documentation needs to contain 3 specific elements. 1. A specific statement of the diagnosis. 2. A summary of related functional limitations. And 3. Recommendations for accommodation. Documentation requirements for specific disabilities are listed on this web page. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, ADHD. You will need your test report that was generated regarding your diagnosis. Ideally, we would like a psychoeducational and/or a neuropsychological test report that was completed within the last 5 years using adult testing measures only. If you do not have a psychological evaluation, your treatment provider will need to fill out the ADHD verification form. Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD. Documentation must provide current evidence of impairment in whatever domain the person is seeking accommodation. For example, if the main impairment is cognitive, a neuropsychological test completed within the last 5 years using adult testing measures only is warranted. Acquired or traumatic brain injury. If the primary impairment is cognitive, for example, learning, attention, memory, etc., then a psychological evaluation is warranted. If the primary impairment is chronic health, for example, a seizure disorder, then a verification form for a chronic health condition must be completed. If the primary impairment is mental health, for example, anxiety, depression, etc., then you will need to have a certified professional fill out a verification form for a mental health condition. These forms are available on this web page. Chronic health condition. A verification form for a chronic health condition must be completed. Once our office receives the paperwork, DSR will contact you to set up an appointment. Deaf or hard of hearing. Please send in your audiology test report written within the last 3 years and/or all documentation related to your diagnosis. Once the paperwork is received, DSR will contact you to set up an appointment. Learning disability, LD. You must have a current neuropsychological test report written within the last 5 years or written after 16 years of age using adult testing measures only. See the guidelines for learning disability criteria. Mental health condition. For anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, or other mental health related conditions, you need to have a certified professional fill out a verification form for a mental health condition. Mobility impairments, either temporary or permanent. Send a report pertaining to your diagnosis if your condition is not obvious. Once the paperwork is received, DSR will contact you to set up an appointment. Visual impairments. Send a report written within the last 3 years and/or all documentation related to your diagnosis. Once the paperwork is received, DSR will contact you to set up an appointment. A special note regarding documentation for service and emotional support animals. Disability support resources may require documentation regarding your service or emotional support animal to ensure that it falls under the protections of federal and state laws. Most individuals who have the benefit of using a service animal will not be required to submit documentation unless the person is going to live in university housing. Emotional support animals are considered part of a therapeutic intervention and must be accompanied by documentation of a disability. See documentation requirements for mental health condition. If you have questions regarding documentation requirements, or for information regarding documentation requirements for a disability not listed or discussed here, please contact the DSR office. The phone number for the office is 616-331-2490. The office email address is dsrgvsu@gvsu.edu.